Hello and welcome back to Small Room Audio. Today we've got a very cool review indeed. This is the Orchard Audio Starkrimson Ultra Streaming Amplifier. And it's a good one, particularly if you're an objectivist. But we'll come back to that. Firstly, let's pose a bit of a question before we get into the bulk of the review. And that is, when you set out on your hi-fi journey, what's your goal? Do you look for truth? You know, truth, does it really exist, I guess, is the first thing. We weren't there when the artist recorded their track. We weren't there necessarily when it was mixed and mastered. But truth to many audiophiles is a neutral, transparent presentation where it doesn't really add any colour and it doesn't kind of warm it up or anything like that. So that normally is a truthful aim. Versus maybe beautification, where you're aiming for a bit more warmth, perhaps a bit more body. Maybe you make some of those poor recordings sound a little bit nicer than they should do. This is the kind of choice you need to make as an audiophile, because the different components and speakers you choose will take you in one direction or the other. Or perhaps you like excitement, perhaps that V-curve is what you're after, and you like the lows and the highs tipped up with the mid-range sort of a little bit subdued, just to get that party or live sort of feeling to it. No matter which direction you go in, it's got to suit what you like. You know, it's a subjective hobby at the end of the day, even if you are an objectivist. The reason I say that is that if you're in the truth camp, then this product is definitely going to be something that you've got to look out for, because it is a truth teller. More on that later on, but it just sort of sets the scene. This is not a beautification product. This isn't going to take your crappy recordings and make them suddenly wonderful. It doesn't add a little bit of warmth like a tube amp. However, as a Class D amplifier, we will see it also doesn't make it sound bad. In fact, in its own truth, it has beauty, particularly when we talk about the top end. But more, as I say, on that later. Before we get into the meat of what it sounds like, let's take a bit of a tour around the Starkrimson itself. Firstly, I'd say build quality for this is not something that you would expect from maybe, you know, a Macintosh or an Audio Research. No, it's not looking like a expensive, high-end kind of product, although it is priced in that kind of medium to high-end sort of range. It's $3,500. So your expectation needs to be reasonably high, right? You're not paying cheap as chips here. This is priced to be good, and it is. But from a build quality point of view, it feels a bit more like a boutique manufacturer, which is what it is. Orchard Audio, it's not going to look like a gem on a shelf. You're not going to say to your friends, hey, look, you know, look at my new amplifier, look at the cool green lights on it, and look at the way it sort of lights up my room like a bit of audio jewelry. That's not what this is. This is something that sits in the background and does all of its talking when you listen to it. So, setting your expectations there for build quality, what's inside certainly is reflective of the amazing engineering that's gone into it, but the outside probably not. It's a bit like akin to exposure products. You don't buy an exposure amplifier because you want to say, ooh, look, isn't this pretty? You buy it because you know it's going to give you rhythm and drive and a fantastic listening experience. Similar sort of thing here, it's about what's inside that counts. And what do you get inside the Starkrimson Ultra Streaming Amplifier? Well, you've got a complete solution in a way, and also a very compromised solution. Let's talk about why it's complete. Inside you have the Pecan Pi streamer and DAC, which are very good in their own right. They are coupled to a dual mono design which outputs 500 watts into 4 ohms, or 250 into 8. And the amplifier section itself uses gallium nitride. Now, that is a new way, or it's not a new way, it's a new component that's going to become very, very popular within a lot of amplification over the next few years. Why? Well, there are lots of reasons on the website and Orchard Audio you can read about, but the two that stood out for me, which I definitely hear in this amplifier, is number one, speed. It's quicker than your traditional kind of MOSFET approach, and B, I said one, so two, not B, A and B, 1 and 2. The second thing, it's top end, it's not harsh, it's sweet, it's clear, it's back to truth and beauty, it's beautiful in its truth. It really is a lovely sounding top end, and that, according to the website, according to this new technology, gallium nitride, that's from that. It's giving you that less harsh presentation and just really lovely highs. So bags of power, will drive anything, is Class D. What next? Well, this is where you get to the compromise part. Yes, you've got everything in the box you need to play all your digital music, but if you spin the amplifier around, and we'll do this carefully, it's also, while I'm spinning it around, this is the bottom. It's got kind of little wibbly wobbly isolation feet, which is quite nice on the bottom, so it will keep it isolated. Around to the back, you'll notice lacking in inputs. I did mention at the beginning this is a streaming amplifier, and it really is streaming only because your only input is down here. That's for your Ethernet, nothing else. You can't do any sort of vinyl playback and put in your phono stage. You can't play off your CD player into this. You can't get an external DAC and put it into this. This is a closed system that's saying, let's keep things simple, stick in the Ethernet, and away you go. Now, hats off to Orchard Audio. That's quite a brave decision, isn't it? You're going to think to yourself, well, you might be alienating quite a few customers, but at the same time, those customers that are looking for a one-box solution that's very straightforward and really sounds great, bang, there you go. Ethernet in, get your speaker terminals and stick in your speaker cables, put your power in, Bob's your uncle, power on, away you go. Now, when I say away you go, that Pecan Pi streamer in there runs off of a Pi, a Raspberry Pi kind of board. So the OS, the operating system that you're going to use to drive your streaming, is going to be one of the operating systems that you can get on Raspberry Pi. So if you're using Roon, like I did, you're going to go for Rupee. If you're going for Volumio as a secondary option, where you're going to use UPnP and also I think Spotify Connect, a bit of AirPlay, things like that, you can do. From my experience, I think my favourite operating system outside of the Roon operating system that you get in here would be Mood. I don't think that's one of the options offered by Orchard Audio, but I should imagine, and I'm not going to try it, but I should imagine it's quite easy to take the lid off here and swap the little memory cards around if you are so inclined. However, I used this and reviewed it simply with Roon as the core up from my computer and this as an endpoint, and then used my phone to do the streaming through Qobuz, and it was fantastic. It was so easy. Plug it in, recognise it straight away, bosh, done, ready to roll. I love that. Compromised, yes, because you can't choose to do other things. I couldn't test this with other DACs, I couldn't test this with other streamers, but that's okay, because this is saying, I know who I am, I know who I'm for. I'm for the person that wants to get stuck in with the Ethernet cable, and internet cable, it's the same thing, but you know what I'm saying, and play some music, and blowing good music it is too. So, it's about time we talked about the truth and the beauty of the Orchard Audio Starkrimson Ultra Streaming Amp. A long title, but hey, it's well worth saying it because it's well worth listening to the glory inside. What is it then? What is the truth that I'm talking about? Neutrality. There is absolutely a ruler flat line response here. There's no V-curve, there's no kind of artificial excitement. It's built for neutrality. It's built for an objectivist who likes good measurements. Because that's the other thing here. It measures impeccably, fully balanced design inside. The noise floor is audible. It's so low. And that creates, as we always say as audiophiles, that inky black background. Well, what does that give you? It gives you details. It gives you little parts of the music which are so subtle, nuanced and delicate that you wouldn't normally hear them with a higher noise floor, with a different design, with something that hasn't been so carefully implemented as this. I'm quite passionate about this because you can just tell by listening to it how much thought has gone into it, and I love it. I love that sort of, that passion that I know has gone into this from the designer Leo. He's really, really put his heart and soul into this and produced something which is punching well above its weight, particularly if you are looking for that neutral presentation. Top to bottom then, so the highs, as I said before, they are beautiful. Not in that kind of tubey way, they're not going to be artificially warmed up, and they're not in the kind of traditional Class D way. And what I say about traditional Class D, real traditional Class D would be a little bit harsh in the highs because it's not sounding very good. More modern Class D maybe rounds it off a little bit. You know, I'm thinking about the Nad M10, and we'll talk about that as a comparison again a little bit later on. But you know, this doesn't do any rounding. This tells you the truth of the high frequencies. It's fully extended, but it's really nice. If the recording's crap, it's going to sound crap, but it's not going to make something sound recorded well sound anything other than fantastic. The mids, they're clear, they're clean. I should imagine this is a very good pairing for a KEF LS50 Meta. It's got that lovely mid-range purity. But again, it's not going to beef it up. It's not going to sort of fatten it anyway. But equally, it's not going to sound thin like many Class D amps can. It's more akin to an AB, really. It's quite muscular in some ways. It's got effortless power, and you really do feel that when it's playing. Same for the dynamics. It's there. It's not so dynamic that you feel like you're getting shocked, but it does hit when the drum hits, and it does startle you when you need to be startled. And that flows through into the kind of the bass region, which is not humpy in the mid-bass region, and it's not sort of elevated in the lows to sound artificially like, you know, a drum and bass concert. It's just giving you the truth of that recording, giving you enough lows when they're required. As I said before, it's ruler flat. You've not got any humps anywhere. This is just the truth. And I really do love it for that. I mean, this isn't something that I aim for in my hi-fi sensibilities. When I build my hi-fi system, I'm looking for primarily beauty, primarily holographic soundstage. And that's why I tend to go towards tubes, which, you know, is a more subjectivist point of view. This was built by a purist, an objectivist, looking at measurements, looking at what sound should sound like. And that's where the truth lies. For me, as a subjectivist, well, mainly subjectivist, I like things that measure well, but you know, where I'm kind of looking for beauty and know that that beauty maybe wasn't the original sound, because I just like to bask in the kind of the slight smokiness or the harmonic distortions, which just give me the feels. This probably isn't what I would buy for the sound that outputs, but many of you would love this because it gives you the truth. I know that's not my truth. We've all got different truths, haven't we? You know, we could be here and be philosophical for ages and go round and round and get very confused all over the shop. But one thing, if I was to criticise this, apart from the lack of inputs, would be that soundstage element. It does give you depth, but it's not like a holographic soundstage you would get from a tube amp, albeit solid state amps that I've listened to, Class A, B, Class A, very rarely do I have anything that sounds any deeper than this. I think maybe the one exception was the Shit Azure amplifier, which is, you know, it's only 20 watts. You can't really compare Apple's Orchard Audio with a pair, which would be the, well, I should say a pair here. I think a Starkrimson is a pair. Anyway, you can't compare the two amplifiers. I'm getting apples and pears all over the shop here, because this is not really in competition with the Shit Azure, which is just a power amplifier. It doesn't have a DAC, doesn't have a streamer, it doesn't have nearly as much power as this. This is something you drop into your system to drive any speaker, fire and forget. Instant good sound, jobs are good. Now, I did ask Leo over at Orchard Audio, but what happens in 5 years' time? When technology's moved on and you've created a new streamer or a new Pecan Pi DAC, do they have to buy a new one of these? £3,500 is quite a lot to invest again. And he's assured me that actually an upgrade path might be on the horizon, that as new products, particularly the DAC, which is quite easy to replace, are created by Leo, he can simply replace it for you or give you a guide on how to do it yourself. That's pretty cool. That's future thinking. And this, in a way, is kind of future-fi, to coin a John Darko phrase. Maybe not small, because it's quite a large box, but the sensibility behind it, the aim, the purity of design. You've got to take your hat off to Orchard Audio. What they've done here is really rather good. Comparisons then, let's get into that. I mentioned the Nad M10 before. Now, that is a little bit cheaper than this to buy, but it is the same sort of thing, right? That's a streaming amplifier. And what that gives you is a one-box solution where you can stream and listen to the music. Straight off, easy to use. Now, admittedly, that is a nicer piece to look at. It feels better built in a way because it's a bit shinier and sexier. But ultimately, why do we buy hi-fi equipment? It's for the sound, right? The sound of this is noticeably better than a Nad M10. A Nad M10 is, you know, very good. This is excellent. It's a level above, if you like. The DAC inside this, I think, is more resolving. The sound in general is better in the high frequency, more extended, but still sweet sounding. The bass is better for micro dynamics rather than macro. You know, the traditional Class D is thumping that macro dynamic heft. Here we have nuance and there's a little bit of texture going on. Same for the mid-range, it's clearer, it's more pure. This is a better amp, in my opinion, than a Nad M10. Compared to other integrateds, well, let's talk about the Exposure XM5. That's a very tiny box compared to this. That's not a streaming amplifier. You'd have to add other boxes around it. And I've done that, and it's a very good solution. But once you start adding all those other boxes, you're in the region of this amplifier. And certainly the XM5 doesn't, it's not as neutral as this. It does have that kind of slight mid-range hump, but it carries rhythm better. So if you're someone that likes to boogie, perhaps that is an amp that's more for you. Now you might think this amplifier is more analytical than musical, but you'd be wrong, because it's not analytical. Yes, you can listen to the individual elements of the music and you can pick them out and they're detailed and there's resolution, but it presents music as a whole. In fact, I'd say it leans marginally more towards musical than analytical, and that is saying something for a Class D amplifier. On the website for Orchard Audio, they say Class D does not mean digital. This is an analog Class D amplifier. And that is so true. This sounds analog, it sounds neutral, and it is a fantastic presentation. This has been quite a monologue, if you like, of enthusiasm, and I've just done it off the hip because I am very passionate about this. I do think this is, in a way, a bit of a game changer. It's not from a big company. It's not cheap, but it is good. And I do definitely suggest you check it out. The other thing to say, I know that when this goes on sale, and I'm one of the first people to review it, it will have significant discounts for early adopters. So watch out for that. Go and have a look at the Orchard Audio website. Get ready for this to launch, because for the first 10 people, I think you're going to get a very good deal indeed. Anyway, if you've liked this review, if you like our attitude towards audio, we should have a bit of fun and, you know, just say it as we feel it comes to us. You know, it's just the passion, the enthusiasm, the love of all things hi-fi. Then please do like and subscribe, because it means a lot to us to have you on our journey, and we'll see you back here very soon.